Gayla. Thanks for doing this today. I really appreciate it. We're going to kind of talk about Gayla and her experiences of being born in another country. Let her kind of divulge all that kind of fun stuff. How she kind of between that and getting here in the States. And maybe start with, I don't know, what end do you want to start on? There or here, and then backtrack. It's all up to you.
Okay. Hi, Deb. Thanks for inviting me to this conversation. I guess I'll just start with what it is that I do at this time, my profession, and then we'll go from there.
Yep.
So what I do is I am a social worker / therapist, and I work with populations with severe and persistent mentally ill. At a mental health agency here in the state of Michigan. My title, it's kind of fancy title, but it really is no. I find it to be fancy. It's called the jail diversion specialist. And basically what that means is that I try to keep people outside of the criminal justice system, outside of jails and prisons, help them get rehabilitated out in the community for their mental health and or substance use issues. So basically I help with, coordinating them, linking them with mental health and substance use services in the community outpatient.
You work quite a bit with the jail and the jail staff, and you kind of like are that go between the transitioning from the jail back into the community. And yeah, that's tough. That's a tough population.
Yes, it is. It's not easy. It's not an easy job, but I do find a lot of fulfillment, especially when I see some progress, in the individuals that we help. Yeah, definitely not easy. And we also, I call myself the bridge, between the mental health and the criminal justice system. Also coordinate for a specialty program that we have, where consumers again get rehabilitated through the criminal justice system. They're usually on probation conditions, and they get help with us in the mental health, agency I work at.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you're not originally born here in the States, so you were born somewhere else across the sea. So let's tell us about that.
That is correct. I am originally from a little, very tiny, small country called Albania. It's in Eastern Europe. Albania is bordered by water with Italy and by land with Greece in Europe. The little town I was born in is called Elbasan, Elbasan is how it's spelled. Very, very little. For a lot of people who may not know, Albania was part of the U.S.A. Union, Russia, and the harsh communist regime. Basically, growing up was like breathing and living communism. Like it, we breathed and we lived it day in and day out. Fear and terror was instilled in all people. Since the day everybody was born, it was under that regime for 50 years. There was no individuality whatsoever, no independent thinking. Everything was community-based. We all did the same things, and everything was censored. There was a lot of censorship. We had to run up everything that, even the new ideas had to be run up to, the powers to be. And they were taken away from us. They weren't our ideas. They were always theirs. Yeah. And if they were ideas they didn't like, people would get killed, basically.
Yeah.
We were always told what to do. We couldn't even, like I said, we couldn't even show a glimpse of objection or individual thinking. It was not tolerated whatsoever. And I think.
Were you able to travel around the area? Because you were pretty restricted
Absolutely not.
within your cities. You even had to have travel papers between the different areas within your communities.
Not really. It wasn't within the country we were allowed to travel. However, outside of the country we were not whatsoever.
Yeah.
No one could get in and out of the country unless you were a politician.
Oh,
Those
okay.
they had the powers.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
were very much restricted, very much closed in.
Okay.
Didn't know. We knew the world. We knew there was a world outside of us. We just didn't know what it was like. Had no
Right.
idea.
Right. Right. So yeah, it's kind of like even all of your, if you had a TV or if you had a radio, if you had something like that where you could listen or watch to something, it was all government based.
It was all government based. It was all about
government
U.S.A.
based, and you saw what they wanted you to see.
Absolutely, and how great communism was, and how great the leaders was, and how great that regime was doing, and what great things they were doing for us, and it was all crap. Excuse my language. It was all
Yeah, right, Gayla.
all to they certainly brainwashed all the people.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and obviously not everybody was going to be that person who was going to, you have people that were marching to that drum, and then you had people that were really unhappy about marching to that drum. And then you had people that did not want to march to that drum and did something about it.
Absolutely.
I think that sounds like you. So I'm not marching to this drum, and you put your thumb up and ran, right?
I did. Well, I was fortunate that the regime had fallen at the time.
Okay.
Had fallen before I left. I was very fortunate.
What time frame was that?
So basically, I was a very young teen, not even a tween, I don't think, actually. Yeah. So the regime fell in the early 90s, very early 90s. That was when all USSR Union fell. If we recall the wall in China.
Yep.
That was about the time when all the other countries broke away from USSR. And I was probably about 9, 10, 11-ish at that time. Okay. So very, very fortunate that it happened when it did, because as soon as I, got into high school, about 16 and a half, that's when I said, this is not for me.
Because it's still all the government structures were still kind of there. It was just
absolutely.
It was all basically lip service as far as, yeah, you can do what you want. It's kind of like I remember watching videos of the Berlin Wall falling, and how people were petrified because
that's what I meant. The Berlin Wall, not the China Wall. Duh.
Yeah, no, I know what you meant. Yeah, I know what you meant. I think it happened in the 80s, so it did take some time for that to come to hitting in
I believe that happened in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Then,
but people were petrified because they'd been under this whole thing since World War II, or probably before that, where there was all this government control, and they didn't want the government to stop giving them their benefits. They like that. I mean, working in the job that you have, that's a very structured environment that some consumers are in, and that outside of that structured environment, their life is chaos. They create chaos. And
absolutely.
They find that there is, whether they're able to admit it or not, that's their comfort zone, is that institutionalized structure. So you're not.
Well, and I think that's a very great comparison, Deb. Like that's exactly what happened after communism fell. People got out of this so structured, doesn't necessarily mean a good structure, but they were so structured, so led by others, that they got out of it. They couldn't take it anymore, and destruction happened. They started destroying all governmental entities and buildings, thinking that it was, it was the building's fault while they were projecting, obviously.
Right.
And there was so much destruction and so much poverty that occurred after that. And then a lot of corruption followed. And
Yeah.
that was when I said, okay, this is not getting better, even though the assumption and the intentions were for the people to get better. After the fall of communism, it was terrible. It got even worse.
An absolute horror. Yeah. Because we had
and there was still the people who were in charge during the communist regime, that they still had a lot of power even after it fell.
Right. Yeah, it's just like in World War One. After all of that madness, they had all kinds of destruction that happened outside of that after the so-called peace had happened. And this is when my father's grandparents came over from very close to where you were born, and they hopped on a ship and whole villages were purged. They went through all of that part of Europe and down like through southern Austria and a lot of those countries that, the borders just keep moving. So we're not even sure what it would have been called back when they had come over, but they hopped on a couple of ships. And like you said, you look at the manifestos from those ships, and it's whole villages of people were being brought over. So that's the same kind of thing. They were escaping that poverty and that destruction to come here in hopes of starting a new life, which, fast forward, what time frame did you, because it's not just like you were able to hop on a plane or a boat or whatever from where you were at, that you were made it to the U.S. There had to be something ahead of you, a wave of something.
Yeah, I was, like I said earlier, I was very fortunate. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, I was I was working with the NATO Army at the time. I picked up English as a second language very early at the time. I was about 8 years old, and I was very fortunate to pick it up quickly and learn it quickly. And that helped me tremendously to make connections with not only the NATO soldiers over during the Kosovo War. I don't know if you're familiar with the Kosovo War that happened in mid-90s, maybe a little late 90s. And after that, I also helped out with missionaries that would come in the country in Albania at the time to help with the Kosovo War and whatnot. So I made a lot of connections with them, and they introduced me to an American-based international exchange student program. And then that's how I was able to get to the States. I flew. I got here legally, got a student visa, came in. I was actually initially residing in a small town near Seattle, Washington State. The town's name was Wenatchee, Washington. Stayed there for almost about 3 years. Finished high school and went on to get my associate's degree in a community college there. And yeah, I was chasing those dreams that I could not get back in the old country.
Yeah, no, they'd say, what's a university, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you basically transitioned into an exchange student, or is that how it was, or just a student visa?
Well, yeah, you get the student visa as an exchange student. So right, as an exchange student, that's what you can get. That's what I got at the time. I got an exchange student visa or a student visa. And then I kept that status for a little bit, I kept going to school, got my associates, as I said, and the rest is history.
Yeah, you kind of basically had to have picked up the family and the whereabouts. The weather was completely different, I'm sure. The people, that had to have been like a huge culture shock.
It sure was. It really, 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 really was. Coming from a destroyed destruction and high poverty, and even though I had learned English at a very young age and thought that I was very fluent in English, I find out, lo and behold, I find out that, oh my gosh, what language is this? This cannot be English.
Yeah, yeah.
So it took me about 3 to 4 months to get adjusted with just the language alone, and then learn a lot of the culture and how life is here. But I was very, very, very lucky that the family I lived with, they were just wonderful, wonderful people. Taught me the ropes, and actually had me exposed to a lot of stuff that basically life and culture here in the States, that I can't thank them enough. I learned so much from them. I really did. I mean, they would take me to like school shows, and plays and games and picnics and camping, and I mean, it was, I don't think I could have learned on my own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would had to have been like fantasy land sort of a thing. You wouldn't even have anything to compare it to, because that's not even, since the TV was so corrupt and controlled, you didn't even have that. There was no comparison for you.
Exactly. And I used to say this all the time in high school to my new friends here in the States. I'd say we didn't know how to dream because like you said, we didn't know what to compare it to.
Right.
We weren't exposed to anything else but what we had. That was it.
Right.
So dreaming wasn't allowed. I couldn't even dream of a different life outside of what I had, because I didn't know it existed.
Right. You thought everything may have been like that, right?
Mm-hmm. So it was just like, talk about the wow effect, I come in, and the first, and this will never, this is an experience, this is a memory that will never leave me, I don't think. But the first store they took me to here in the States was Sam's Club. Well, I take that back. That was Costco over there. So
okay.
Costco, not Sam's. Yeah. So it was Costco, and talk about I remember my question was something like, to the effect of, are all the stores this big here?
Yeah.
Now I know they're not all the stores are that big, but I didn't even know what a supermarket was. We didn't have supermarkets or even mini markets back there. We had little tiny shops.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to get back to now. They're all telling us to shop local, which I absolutely love. On the drive home from work, I passed by this people's home, nice home. They got a nice pond in the yard, and they have this stand that's, maybe like 3.5, and it's deep, and it's maybe about 6 feet tall, and they got a little fridge. They run, I don't think there's electricity, though there's electricity, but there's no light. She's got a little mini fridge, and then in the summertime, she'll put vegetables in her refrigerator. She'll put eggs, so they have chickens, and she's got a garden, so tomatoes, peppers,
That's
melons,
wonderful.
pumpkins, everything is all right. So I can stop on my way home, and she's got the little box out there. She has a little thing out, says all the prices, and then a little box that you drop your money in.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, we have something less similar around where I live.
Yeah. So and then there's another one as I'm coming down. There's somebody else set one up on another road. So it's like, oh my gosh, that's the best.
It's wonderful. And the difference is that everything there, all the little shops, were government owned and government ran.
And you couldn't just go in there and get what you wanted. You obviously had to have your vouchers or whatever system.
Yes, everything was rationed, and there were big lines. You had to be in line, and if you were, at the very end of the line, sometimes you would even go without.
Yeah,
because it was over.
Right.
I remember my parents would, and the stories they tell these days, but they would get up at literally 2 a.m. to go and get in line for milk.
Yeah.
Because milk would be out if they, if they were at the end of the line.
Right.
They would have to wait for milk until next week, the week after. Same went for eggs and, you name it. Just the basic stuff, basic produce that we need, that we don't even think about here,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I think people are gonna start thinking about it now. Just
Yeah,
with
with
all
the,
the
especially
crazy
with the
things are going
prices of
on.
eggs. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's because of all the crazy stuff that's going on. So that's why I mentioned, people are either gonna buy their own chickens and do it themselves in the backyard. Or they're just gonna rely on each other. I have a niece she's got a bucket load of chickens and she sells her eggs to a select few people.
Hmm.
But
Hmm. That's wonderful.
eggs, yeah,
It's
they have
it's
chickens.
crossed our minds too.
Yeah, and there are co-ops too now. I think that people can get involved in. And if you're really busy and it's not the cheapest route to go, but there are some other organizations like Michigan Farm to Family where they try to go to different family-owned farms all around the state of Michigan. I think they try and keep it like within 100, 150 miles. So if you buy milk from them, you can buy milk that's actually grass-fed and finished. That's up in Kalkaska. So what is that? A couple of hours from here. It's up close to Traverse City.
Hmm.
Eggs, cheese, milk, herbs, and you can get stuff year round. So they do go outside of that, but
That's cool.
largely you can buy stuff from local farmers, and they're around. You just have to look. And then we have our farmers
Hmm.
markets too.
I'm sure. Uh-huh. And we
So
utilize the farmers market quite a bit in our family,
yeah,
especially
yeah,
in the
yeah,
summer,
yeah.
spring and summer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we will not, regardless of the fear porn, we will not do without. There's plenty for everybody. And I don't know, have you noticed there's been a couple of community gardens popping up in Saginaw? Have you noticed that?
I I have not. I have not noticed that.
There's actually
Huh,
a couple,
that's great.
there's one that's right before you get on the expressway, that state, I think, and it's usually they'll have like flowers, but I think a couple of them in areas now that they'll have. So basically it's where a home had obviously been a home or two, and it's been knocked down and leveled, and they've basically turned that into a community garden. So I
That is
think
cool.
there's several of them starting to pop up, and I think it's going to be of necessity. I think decentralizing is
Absolutely.
going to be really important. Just
I am glad to hear that.
plus your own
That's great.
backyard. Everybody's got to grow a little something, something.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right. Well, I think we'll make it happen because for years my husband and I have been talking about, coming up with making our own garden and we might just make that happen.
yeah, yeah, and you can get stuff that like covers your garden in the winter. I have a 3 season, so I have something that's set up in there, and I still can go out there and get herbs. I went out and got herbs a
Nice,
couple of days ago. So
nice.
yeah, there's always alternatives. We just have to, like you said, you didn't grow up with that creativity, but now that you've been here for a number of years now,
Well, let's just say that I've
it's
been here
really
longer than I've
blossomed
been
for
here.
you, right? Huh?
Quite a bit. I've been here a lot longer than I've actually been living in the home country.
That's not a bad thing either. But you've gone back. You've gone back to visit. So things have really
Yes.
changed today, though.
Oh, absolutely. Things have
You find
changed
that
there.
people are they more self-sufficient? Have they acclimated to this new responsibility?
Well, it's been some 30 years now, so yes, I would say yes. They're still struggling. There's still a struggle with unemployment and corruption. I guess change doesn't come easy for people, as we know. Change is good, but to be subdued and censored for 50 some years, I guess it's hard to change that. So they're still struggling, but they certainly have come a lot of ways still. I have gone back several times. As a matter of fact, we are going back next month to visit again. It's going to be interesting because my
The whole
family is going back.
family's going.
The whole family's going, and it's the very first time for them. So it's going to be very interesting. Talk about the culture shock.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That'll be
So,
exciting.
huh?
That'll be exciting, both for you
That
and for the kids.
that is very exciting. We're looking
Because your
forward to it.
parents are still there, right? Do you have siblings that
My
are still there?
my parents, my brother, I have a brother. It's just my brother and I growing up. But I have a huge family as far as extended family goes. Lots of cousins and aunts and uncles. And they get to see my crazy big Albanian family. I don't know if you're familiar with the Greek movie, My Big Greek Fat Wedding.
My big fat Greek wedding. Yes, absolutely.
It's something like that.
yeah. Yeah, don't forget your Windex, right?
That's right. It heals everything.
That's awesome. That's cool. That's cool. So I guess really would there be anything that you would change? Anything that you would do different looking back?
I don't think so. I mean, communism was harsh. It was very harsh. But I don't think I would be the person I am today if I didn't go through that, if I didn't experience that hardship. I think it really helped me become who I am. Yeah, it was tremendous. It was horrible.
Mm,
No, people shouldn't have to go through that. People should be valued for, having their individual independent thoughts.
mhm,
They should be valued and encouraged to be creative. Absolutely.
mhm,
However, I think it pushed me towards that. It pushed me to understand that the sky is the limit, literally,
mhm, mhm,
that I do have a lot of potential, that I do have individual independent thinking, that I am more than this regime, that and it's helped me with my boundaries. It's helped me with, the life I live.
Yeah, yeah, because I think that this whole conversation that we started was outside of this was about boundaries and going through the experiences that you did have uh at a very tender age, and then having everything kind of bust open that say, I don't want this anymore. And that you kind of draw the line in the sand more or less. Right. So you have those boundaries and you can be pushed no further.
That's right. I said a long time ago, I said never again.
Yeah.
Right. And I base everything that I do and I say on that. I of course I remain professional, I remain kind, I remain caring, but boundaries are boundaries, and they are there for a reason.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. With like you said, caring and kindness, but also, don't poke the bear.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. There is, yeah, there's a vicious bear inside of me, and I'm sure inside of everyone, really.
I agree. I agree. Everybody's got that little grr inside
Mhm.
of them for sure. Anything else you wanted to share? I really appreciate you doing this. This has been
Of
absolutely
course.
fascinating.
Course.
And
Oh, I love what I do. I appreciate you, helping me or pushing me to, kind of get a little of my story out. I think we all have unique stories and we can
oh,
all learn from each other. I love to learn every day. I love, I definitely challenge myself with everything and anything that I do. Um, yeah, it's been interesting, the journey been interesting, and I'm very grateful for it all. Like I said, I don't think I would change a thing.
yep. Okay.
I'm also a mom and a wife, and I have two boys. They are, well, let's say our youngest is going to be an adult in maybe 2 weeks now,
Oh,
and
yeah.
our oldest is already an adult, so 19 and almost 18.
19, 18. All right. Yeah. Life is going to get real different.
Sure
Soon to
is.
be,
We're
soon to be
seeing a
an
glimpse
empty
of it.
nester.
Right. Yes. Yes. It's been interesting seeing them grow up in a country with so much potential and individuality and independence and potential, and and just we've just let them be who they want to be, who they want to become, and it's gonna be it's very cool to see um that if you let people be themselves, if you
Mhm.
give them choices,
Yeah.
that they can really blossom to be these, amazing people.
Yep.
Um, so
Yep.
that I guess to wrap this up is we let people be who they are,
Exactly.
choices choices and all. you know, and freedom is not to be taken for granted.
Oh, absolutely not. Yep, that's definitely something that I think most people here in the States kind of more or less take for granted.
I agree. I hate to say that, but I do agree. I see it, and I always tell everyone, you know, I feel like I know the best and the worst of two worlds, and I do not take that for granted.
Right. I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't have some of those things existing on similar planes, but I think they're, you know, I don't know if insidious is the right word, but they're very, it's like an undertow. It's very stealth. So it's still very dangerous as far as things like censorship and, you know, the programming of the government. And I mean, we have that all over the world. It's just in a different capacity, different means that they achieve the same goal, I guess. So, but this is definitely a lot of change happening around the world that hopefully is just going to expand, where people will be able to, just like you said, be who they are, be themselves, and not feel ashamed. So, all right.
For sure.
Again, we're going to stop the recording. Thank you so much again for doing this. And
absolutely.
I'll see you at work on Monday.
Be there.